Yeah, it's a subject that I've wanted to talk about 2+ years going. Like even before then, like on my like on worst reviews, I've really wanted to make a video about product placement.
It's like people only do things because they get paid. And that's just really sad.
And it's always been a discussion. It's always been an argument. It's always been like a presence in the discussion of film, at least somewhere. Maybe not like in your face, but sometimes it is. Like sometimes it's like, and me and Trav, like when we discussed it, we got kind of heated. It wasn't like heated
Yeah, it
towards each
wasn't like
other
yeah, it wasn't
or
heated towards
anything. It
each
was
other,
just
but
like something that somehow we actually kind of have a little bit of passion for. I don't know
well,
what unlocked it.
we're mainly discussing product placement in movies. That's what this whole thing's about. Like me and Ashley bought because it just came out, and I highly recommend it if anybody hasn't seen it, and especially if anybody even barely likes Queen, you need to go watch this movie. But Bohemian Rhapsody came out, and me and Ashley watched it last night. And one thing that I noticed about the movie, and I didn't notice whenever we saw it in theaters, was like, there's a lot of people wearing Adidas, and Ashley just kept pointing out, like, actually, as a matter of fact, everyone's wearing Adidas shoes, which I mean is, it's a nice looking shoe, especially for like back then, and it's like almost probably like the Vans of today is how I kind of see it, or like Converse. And one thing I was noticing on the scene where Brian May is basically like coming up with the stomping and clapping for "We Will Rock You" is like, wait a minute, you know what? He's wearing an Adidas jacket, and to like what something that Ryan, and one reason I wanted to record this episode at some point is because Ryan pointed out to me that like there are people that, and I don't know, and maybe he can explain a little more of where these like types of people are that just hate the idea of product placement. Me and Ryan discussed it, and like he said, we didn't get like heated towards each other, but just heated on the subject because it's kind of really frustrating that people would get very upset about like, oh, like for instance, an Adidas jacket, it's too on the nose, it's too like sponsorship-ish or whatever. It's like, well, if you think about it, what else are they supposed to do? Like, what other jackets are they supposed to wear? Just everyone not wear a name brand? Like, that's a little boring in a sense, because if people were walking around not wearing name brands in movies, it's like, I would probably get pulled out of the movie. There would probably be a certain level of, like, not noticing that. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be that big of a deal, but at the same time, like, if you want to make your movie more believable, more real, in my opinion, you should have real products in the film, and that's my side of it.
My side of it is basically exactly what you said. What I was thinking, like, while you were telling me about the Bohemian Rhapsody, which, by the way, now is going to be a thing where now I'm going to be noticing that throughout the movie, like seeing it again. But I think, in a sense, I love it. Like there's probably
It
a
kind of
line.
it puts you into a time, you know what
Yeah,
I mean? It's like Adidas is, like you said earlier, is like a very 80s brand.
it's very 80s. Like it's very it's a good way to
Fits
simplify.
right in with Freddie Mercury's time. It really does, in my opinion.
It's a good way to simplify the whole like trends going on. Is just, hey, Adidas. And like even with Back to the Future, pretty much all the fashion war is guess. And my uncle and my mom was like, hey, everybody in the 80s was pretty much wore guess or nothing. Like that was their whole, like, it was really a big thing. Like, that's what that tells me. Not that even now, I mean, maybe it's like, oh, Converse or nothing. Maybe you could make that argument or something like that. But
Like a scene that comes to mind is like the cable guy, Jim Carrey wears Converse on the scene where he's like trying to trying to show him up on playing basketball, which is a great scene. But he's wearing Converse because like they're just one of the most noticeable types of shoes. You can't there's no way, like, unless it's somehow, because there are off-brand Converse, but like it wasn't, because I remember the logo on the shoe, and like and all this stuff, and all I'm thinking is like, well, so they do have to go through certain kind of like a business in some way, signing papers, all the stuff to get certain brands in movies and get the rights to it and everything. And so I think maybe in a way people get taken out of the movie. And yes, there has been bad product placement in movies. Like people always jump over to like what's his name, Mark Wahlberg, and I don't know what the freaking whichever one, Transformers 4. Basically where I don't remember the scene exactly, but maybe, I should have maybe watched it before this to be able to describe it better, but it's like probably like some kind of beer, it was like Busch or something along those lines. I think it may have been just Budweiser, and like a truck crashes and there's just beer everywhere all over the ground, and like he drinks it in like a sense where it was almost like a commercial, and it was just like this kind of awkward scene of like, oh, he takes a sip out of beer even though there's just some danger. Like, and so in a way, like, I could see how it could be done wrong, but as for just wearing the clothes and stuff, I literally have never had an issue. That's like saying, oh, everyone should wear like off-brand band shirts in movies, when to me it's like, if you're wearing like a Metallica shirt or something, it's more realistic to me than like something I've never heard of.
Yeah, like that would take me completely out of it. Like if it was something off-brand or something, like I get you. Like you said, there's a certain point where it literally wouldn't bother me, because I'm not even really a big guy that I do notice brands and product placements. Like my graphic design eye has really trained me like to really notice stuff like that.
And honestly, when I think about it, like Back to the Future, they did it pretty spot on. That was probably the first movie that, like, those movies were like the first movies that I was like, that I remember thinking like, oh, there's some good products in this movie, but like it wasn't like everything is the same product.
Yeah, like I think the most famous, in fact, I think one of the most famous uses of product placement is Back to the Future. Because of the whole diner scene, as he's like, yeah, give me a Pepsi free. Like, oh yeah, but we don't have any Pepsi. Like, you got to pay for it. And then he's like, well, just give me a tab.
Like,
so it's just straight up like, yeah, Pepsi and tab. Like, that's 80s. And that has never, even that will never take me out of it.
I wonder, like, level, just dropping the name, what did that mean? It probably is, like, more under the lines, like, you have to show it on screen for it to cost anything, but at the same time, like, you never know. Like, I actually don't know the full rules of that, like, dropping a name brand, even just with words, what does that cost for, and stuff like that, but, it could go any direction, yeah.
But it's one of these things. Here's the main thing. Like, why I wanted to make, the product placement video on Worst Reviews, and this is just going to replace that. This is just the best format for it. But was basically, and love him or hate him, why it really, really came to my attention. Like, wow, there are probably people that really get this heated over this nonsense. But like Nostalgia Critic. I keep up with him completely every episode.
Check out Channel Awesome.
And everyone knows about Nostalgia Critic, and everyone by now has already forgot about him and has already just put him in the trash. That's just the main consensus. But anyway, I was showing Trav all of his episodes. Just again, I was just like, man, I'm just gonna watch all these again, because all of his early stuff, I don't even care what you say, it's all just so good. Like all of his like first few years of doing it, like first 3 years, is just perfect. But anyway, one of those episodes is from a movie called Double Team, and no one's heard of this movie. Like, and if you have, then you're like a superhero or something that just knows about just about everything. But anyway, there's a scene just toward the end that is so stupid, just where these guys are being protected from an explosion by a Coke machine. And it's one of these things where just Nostalgia Critic got so heated about, Coke, was okay, what other machine is it gonna be? Like,
Yeah, that's
just
kind of where you first.
Pepsi machine, you're gonna get just as frustrated. Oh yeah, Pepsi, yeah, they stop,
That's kind of where
just
that's where you
stop
first brought
because
this up to me, and I forgot about you saying that because like it probably. I mean, that moment in that movie, just the way you describe it, is like it sounds like it would be kind of cheesy and over the top. So I think I think people get taken out of it, like with Transformers. I remember, very specifically remember whenever I think it was Transformers 1 or 2, whichever one, where like at the end, like stuff is starting to get electronics are getting infected and turning into Transformers. Like I remember specifically that one like machine that's like turns into like something turned into like an Xbox Transformer and it had the sound effect. I remember that. So like there's like moments where it's like it's cheesy. So I can imagine that Coke machine might just be, you know what I mean, like just cheesy in that way. So I understand people's side on that, but like there's also people that's just a Coca-Cola machine in a movie that they don't like it. That's a bad decision, but there's a little bit of that where it's like if it's only Coke machines, I get taken out. Like it's just like
and
if
I
Coke is
understand,
just
like, the
everywhere,
first
because there's
time,
some really bad movies that like, or even good movies that have bad overuse of product placement, where it's just like the only drink in the film is Coke. That's where it's wrong. But like you said, like what else? Like on a scene like that, like I would be more. I told you last time we talked about this off camera, um, like if it was anything else, like a Tab or a more off-brand thing, I would be way more taken out. But Coke is just like, that's a normal thing. That's the most drank soda in the U.S. of A. Like
it's really like it. Like if you are somebody who gets heated about this, it's really like take a step back. Because even with Trav's point about like, okay, what if it's the only thing in the movie? Even to that level, like, in the later Jurassic Park movies after Jurassic Park 1, there's only Mercedes, and I may be wrong, but I know like in the first one it's just the Explorers.
Yeah, talk
Like,
about, people buying those Explorers right after they see that, by the way, and I'm sure there's been freaking thousands of people that did that in freaking 93.
I guess.
Like, just like, because that was a freaking good-looking car. Even, when I was watching it as a kid, I was like, man, I love that car and the color. And obviously, there's probably people that went to dealerships like, can I get it in that color? Like, with, like, all that, the Jurassic Park logo and, like, all this cool stuff. I mean, I'm sure, and if you know of anybody that did that, leave it as a link in the video. That'd be, cool. But yeah, like...
Or heck, Back to the Future. Again, the freaking DeLorean is just... That's huge product placement. Like,
yeah, because you got people to buy more DeLoreans. Is all I've heard. That's all I've heard about, and it was a very
never taken me out.
And back
Like,
before
of
that
the
movie
like,
was even being made, like all I've ever heard from like people that made the movie is like, and like interviews and stuff like that, is like a DeLorean wasn't as popular until that movie came out. Like, I mean, yeah, it was always been like the type of, like there was just not as big of like much of an eye on the DeLorean. Unless I'm wrong about that, unless if somebody could clear me up, but like that's all I've heard is that after the movie came out, like there was more people wanting one and buying them.
But my whole point, like going back to even the Mercedes thing, which that is more extreme, just because Mercedes is actually a really high end brand compared to Coke or whatever, or Pepsi. Which I guess both of those are technically high-end brands. I guess maybe there's no difference in like, what you'd have to spend or what kind of contracts you'd have to go through. Maybe, I don't know. But it's like, why on earth? Like, even if even the Sony thing, like, why on earth would you bring it up? Much less complain about its presence in the movie. If the movie itself is already $500 million to make. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, because the opposite of that would be, and like the opposite of that would be like think about, and when I really think about it, like it is kind of this thing where Deadpool was the first one was like one of the more real, it's over the top whatever, but it had like a really great love story and all this, and like it was Deadpool breaking the fourth wall, but somehow they did it, they wrote it so right where it's like everything seems so real and everything, but they had such a low budget that if you notice, there's not any product placement in that movie. But so it's like it could be argued like, like the movies are just better without product placement, but at the same time it's like there's a level to it, like that's kind of what the point that I think both of us are trying to make here is, like, to me at least, there's a level to it, there's a boundary you don't cross, but at the same time I've just never understood the people that just don't like it at all and don't want it in movies at all, whatever. That's just real life.
See, yeah, it's like, it's literally just bringing more realism to the movie, which a lot of people complain about, like, yeah, it's lacking in realism, yada yada, there's that like, okay, so, and that's a whole other thing, but anyway, like, okay, and this is a pretty, I guess, obscure example. I mean, Double Team is a pretty freaking obscure example already, but like, okay, Atlanta, which I guess I could plug the show Atlanta. It's amazing. Love it. Donald Glover / Childish Gambino, just his show. Amazing show. That's going for realism of the highest order. It's going for it. Like, I love it for that reason. Like, it's like next to Breaking Bad, which is probably a whole other conversation, but it's just going for that realism. And what I loved, this is just probably my favorite use of product placement ever, I guess, besides Back to the Future. And I can probably think of a lot more stuff that I really love the product placement specifically, they just had, there was this, okay, for one, it was a restaurant that was an off-brand, I guess, made-up restaurant for the show. I'm not sure, so that's a whole other thing, but they just sitting right in the middle of the frame, just at the beginning of, I think it's season 2, episode 2. Yeah, that's what it was. Or episode 1, or one of those. Just the Louisiana sweet tea, just big container, just sitting there, and it's just a slow zoom, just right in on it. And it's just all this stuff happening in the background that's like unsettling, but it's just like focusing on this thing to make you feel less unsettled, and that's what it is. I freaking loved that, because it's like, you can't say a word. You can't say a word about Louisiana sweet tea. Like, and that's just, I loved that, because this got me ignited to make, the video again. I was like, there's that extreme, and then, okay, the other extreme, I talked with Trav over the phone, because I was like, I've got to tell you about this, was freaking IHOP in Man of Steel.
Yeah, there's a lot of backlash about that.
Like,
whatever, it's like, so those of you that haven't seen Man of Steel, there's a scene where basically Superman this is just a long story short, but I think it's Zod or somebody just basically throws him into, well, it's that one chick, I forgot her name, but one of Zod's minions, as you could say, but she they have a fight, and she throws him into an IHOP, and well, at one point it's like a freaking bank, but I don't know if there was like a name brand bank or whatever, but just like a lot of people are like, oh, I get taken out if it's humorous. When it gets thrown into IHOP, you kind of chuckle a little bit. It's like, okay, IHOP. So I can kind of see how that could be quote unquote annoying to see that, but I don't see like that kind of humor to be obnoxious. Like, it's nice to just have something to laugh at. So whenever he gets thrown into and it shows that wide shot of the building and it's the IHOP sign, you're like, oh, that's pretty great. Like, I don't know, that's just how I feel about it. Is like, that's an IHOP, and it would exist anywhere, and it probably in that place that they're at, that country land and all that area, is like, that's probably where an IHOP would be, like, that's how I see it. Is like, I don't see it as a problem. I see it as like, I might chuckle at it, because just, if you show a brand, sometimes it just, I don't know, there's something about it, there's like a humor to it, but like, but I know it's not intentionally for humor. Like, unless Zack Snyder was like, you know what would be great and hilarious if we had IHOP in this movie. Like, and it's just like, I don't see that as like an issue. I see it as like great. Like, that's hilarious and great because it's a real place. It would take me out of it more if it was like, we're gonna call this place like, I don't know, just some really stupid made up name that sounds like it's trying to tie it to Superman or something.
Yeah, like
the Red Cape Breakfast or something like
something
or
like
something
that
random like that.
That
That's when I get angry because I've seen movies like that where they're trying to tie it to the origin of something of the movie you're watching. I'm like, no, please no. IHOP probably made its money. All right, you know what I mean? Like, places make their money because their company is in movies. But I've never seen that as like an issue. I think it's like that's a great opportunity for companies to make money. It's also like,
that's what I'm saying.
I can guarantee after walking out of that movie, people were like, "You want to go to IHOP?" It's like it's not a bad thing. You're making companies money, and for some reason, people turn that into a negative. Like, oh, well, that's cheap or whatever. It's like, well, let me clear up something for you guys. IHOP is a real breakfast restaurant. I would be more taken out of it if it was just something called restaurant breakfast or whatever, like, because there's just like some restaurants and movies it's just like, we serve breakfast, like, well,
or
and I'm always like, well, where is that, what is it,
freaking,
like, I'm questioning,
all of a sudden thinking of that.
It's like,
okay,
or like that looks like, or like that restaurant in Baby Driver, which I know that, okay, that's forgiven just because that was a name of like someone names it after themselves, like Joe's Breakfast Place or something like that. Like, that's kind of realistic because there's plenty of places that aren't just a company. Yeah. But at the same time, but if in Baby Driver that place was just literally Waffle House, I would feel nothing more or less about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that place in that movie is exactly like Waffle House. It looks just like it. I've always thought that, and I'm like, that's basically what it is, in my opinion. But in the movie, it's just the name of a place, and like, but IHOP, that to me, that's just obnoxious. Whenever you get angry about that.
Yeah, because like my point that I'll never not make, that I just made just a bit ago, is like, why would you bring that up? Why would you complain whenever the movie is like $500 million to begin with?
Like, I'm just like, at least make it a real place.
Yeah,
or
because
Applebee's in Talladega Nights. I'm sure there's plenty of people that are like, that's terrible, but it's like, I think that was hilarious and great.
Every week, we should come back to this Applebee's and sit at this table and have a family meal.
It's a great idea, Mama.
We thought of also just Drake and Josh. Like,
oh god,
all the product placement is soda and like,
for those old people out there, Drake and Josh, it's a Nickelodeon show that was on while we were basically growing up, and is one of the best shows of all time. The only issue with the whole the only issue with the whole show was every single thing was somehow a made fun of version because they probably, I guess, just couldn't afford it.
What's a game sphere?
Only the most sophisticated gaming experience ever created by humans, and it's spherical. Spherical.
Yeah.
And I personally, I think that's BS. It's Nickelodeon, dude. They probably could have somehow did that. But yeah, like, I forgot what it was, but like, I don't know. I think Mountain Dew was like Mr. Fizz or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't remember all
like
of them. Like,
takes me completely.
Oh yeah, and Mocha Cola
on,
was
like,
Coca-Cola, and that was, and they had, and all of the like cans, you could tell that it's just like this printed, like, just fake, like, thing that they had to probably make in paint or something, like, on the computer, like, just Mocha Cola and all this stuff. And there's sort of this humor to it where you're like laughing at the names of them, but then every time they had a product in Drake and Josh, I'm like, okay, that it just takes me out of it a little bit, because some of the episodes were not to be humorous. They were, some moments were taken pretty seriously in that show, and then like, oh, you got just a shot of Coca-Cola in the shot, like, okay, thank you for taking me out of the whole show, like, just kind of taking my brain out of it just a little bit.
Yeah, like, it's so, I don't know, maybe maybe like for the people that do get angry at like IHOP, it's like, do they prefer that? You can't convince me that people prefer that. There's no,
Let us know in the comments, guys. Do you prefer more of like the made up brands? Like, I mean, Drake and Josh was just way too on the nose. Like Coca-Cola, like every drink brand, because Josh worked at a movie theater, so you had to see it a lot. And I understand. And what the funny part is like I never had a problem with it. I remember the name of the movie theater was like the Premiere. And I remember that about it, but always just thinking, well, that could literally be the name of a theater. And I remember thinking that as a kid, is like that could literally, that's very realistic.
So that's forgiven.
And
like, very
but
much
then
so.
like every single product in the and on top of that, what always took me out as well, every movie in there was made up. Every movie that they were showing was some kind of fake poster with a fake name, and there was humor to that.
Yeah,
but it was also like, but this show isn't supposed to be like a parody of itself. Some of it is pretty serious. You know, it's like it wasn't. You know, it. Okay, let me correct myself there. Like, the show was literally a Nickelodeon show for comedy. It was. It wasn't just the posters and the name of the movies, but just the fact that, like, you go out of your way to be, like, Mountain Dew was almost the name Mountain Dew, but something different. Coca-Cola is clearly, Mocha-Cola in there, and all these different brands. I would rather you completely change the world where everything would be just completely different and not close to the same thing, than anything else. I would rather, because then I would just think, oh, maybe that's like some brands that I don't know about that are somewhere else in the world. But no, like, it's clearly, you're sitting there even as a kid, like, that's pretty stupid. Would it be cheaper for like a company like WB or like some Sony or movies, movie companies like that, like, would it be cheaper for them to just be like, for instance, the original Spider-Man movie, like Sam Raimi, had Dr. Pepper majorly in it, and I remember very specifically having, like, when I drank Dr. Pepper back then, they would have, like, Spider-Man movie advertisement. Oh, and I remember, Iron Man 2. Like, very specifically, I remember drinking, Dr. Pepper or whatever it was in high school, and then like just seeing the Iron Man 2 like the advertisement with Don Cheadle and him on the can, so I remember that very specifically. So you can kind of like tie your brain to to certain movies on certain products, so that's always been a cool thing for me that I like will always closely remember as products. Like, I don't necessarily think Dr. Pepper makes me think of original Spider-Man movie, but at the same time, like, if it was to come up in some way, I would remember that. But would it be cheaper for companies to just, and I don't know why none have really ever done this, but like Dr. Pepper, for instance, is it cheaper for them to like sponsor Mr. Pibb or something like that, where it's like the opposite version of the product? I don't really know how that works. And me and Ryan were talking about it, like, how does that, like, what, like, I'm just kind of confused on that because I've never actually seen that. I don't think I can think of a movie off the top of my head that's like, oh, let's use for one really good example of no product placement in a certain franchise that most of us know and love is Star Wars. Has anyone ever seen a red Coke can that is like in an alien language or something? Like, that's how I see if they did put Coke in Star Wars or a drink like that, they probably would have it like made fun of, like with an alien language. But man, if I saw that in Star Wars, I probably wouldn't be a Star Wars fan. That's how much I would dislike that. So I can see that level of hatred towards it. But like, for instance, that's the point I'm trying to make, is like, look at Star Wars, has like no product placement whatsoever, because everything is like a galaxy far, far away, and everything is made up, and like, it might be, Earth exists and all this, and that we're on it later in time or something, but like, generally it's just a different world. Just generally it's a total different place. So it's like, there's no, there are products, like drinks and bars and all that stuff, but all those things that are real in Star Wars, that would be real, that are real in real life. But if you really think about it, like Star Wars, no product placement. So,
yeah, that'd probably be the one example of old time that's just straight up like, yeah, I think that's where we both agree. to that extent, but it's like, come on, just please get a life. Like,
So me in the end. Like, oh, but come on, please get a life and stop doing this show.
jeez.
Because it's just like, there's so many different levels to it, but like I said, I mean, mostly it's like, there's levels to it, but it rather goes one way or the other. Rather, it's good product placement in a movie, or bad.
Apparently it was interesting enough for us to actually consider, like, oh, we'll do an episode on this, and I mean, it's not something that really comes up every day. And a lot of people may not even care or even care to notice. And also, like, I wonder what anyone would think of just Run DMC's song, My Adidas.
What?
They have a song about the Adidas stuff they wear. So
That's pretty great. Probably that's kind of good. That's
oh my gosh.
That's good product placement in music. But then again, I gotta hear the song to get a full opinion on it. I don't know about it.
My Adidas. But yeah, guys, any more on this subject, I would love to hear, because it's really weird. It seems like something everyone has a different opinion about. Like, everyone. Yeah, guys, definitely have an awesome week, and you'll be hearing us maybe weekly. We're trying to figure that out.
At least once a week. I think that's what we're gonna go for. Thank you guys as always so much for watching. Please like, please share, please subscribe, and all that beautiful stuff, guys. And tune in to the next episode, probably next week, and you'll be seeing me and Ryan in the next. Actually, you'll be hearing us. I don't know why. I still gotta get used to saying hearing in the next one. Trav out, and peace out.